The Gemara says in Shabbos that if a person was really perfect, his body would not decay. Meaning that his soul would refine his body to the extent that the body would become a spiritual entity, that the body itself would not decay. The Gemara says that kol mi she'en lo kina al chaveiro, if a person can live life without an ounce of jealousy, ein atzmaisa of markivan, his bones would not rot. As it says in the verse of Mishlei, urakav atzamais kina. Jealousy is the cause of the rotting of the bones. But a person who is free from a little bit of jealousy, his bones won't rot. Meaning his body itself will become a spiritual entity, but it won't decay. And by the way, there are stories of Gedolei Yisrael about whom this was said. In our time, in our generation,
I know people like that.
in our generation. So it's an amazing, amazing thing. But for most of us, who are not quite at that level, there still is a tension between our soul and our body. Meaning, our soul is in the right place. Our yearnings for spirituality, for Vayikra, for cleaving to God, are in the right place. But we're constrained. We're constrained by a body which has its own ideas. Comfort, pleasure, etc., etc. And this really is the tension of life. And this, the Ramchal says in the Mesilas Yesharim, you know, the conflict in the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the good inclination and the evil inclination, is not, as we depict in cartoons, there's a little angel on one shoulder, a little devil on the other shoulder, who are engaged in a tug of war. So the conflict between good and evil really is the conflict between the neshama and the guf. It's the soul, which wants spirituality, it wants wisdom, it wants cleaving to God, and the body, which has its own interests, pleasure, amusement, and so on and so forth. And this is the conflict in life. And you know, if a person is more successful, then he elevates his body, and his body becomes a spiritual entity. If he's less successful, the body remains coarse and materialistic, and there's this ongoing source of conflict between body and soul. Korbonos obviously are symbolic. But what does it mean to symbolize? What it really means to symbolize is a very, very deep yearning that all of us should have, which is that our souls should be freed from the constraints of the body. That is really what a Jew should yearn for. Because if we can't conquer our bodies, we should at least be released from the constraints of the body. And this idea, by the way, is not an original idea. This idea, Rabbeinu Yonah, one of the medieval commentators, one of the Rishonim, says in Maseches Brachos, he says that when a person prays, that is what a person should experience in the process of prayer, as if his soul is disembodied. There's an expression called the hispashtus hagashmias. A person literally strips his body away, and his soul becomes a disembodied entity. And that really is the loftiest level that a person should aspire to. Not to be held back, not to be held down. And I believe the slaughtering of the korban is symbolic of that. When you slaughter the korban and you separate the blood from the body, that symbolizes the release of the soul. And when you in turn take that blood and you offer it on the altar, you are elevating the soul. You're leaving the body behind, and you are elevating the soul. And that is symbolic of what should be our deepest yearning. That we should not be constrained by the mundane drives and demands of the body, but rather our soul should be released to be able to cleave to God and acquire wisdom, etc. And this is a very powerful symbol. It's a symbol, but it's a symbol of that which should be a very, very deep yearning in our part. That's really what we should want. We should not want to be controlled by our passions, by our desires, by our pettiness, but rather we should, from time to time at least, aspire to be disembodied souls who want to achieve the maximum that a soul can achieve. There's a higher aspiration, which is that our bodies can also be refined to the point where they can also offer themselves to God. But that's not a level that everyone can aspire to. I mean, even the first level is probably not a level that everyone can aspire to. But it's easier than to achieve this. So therefore, we say the following, that the offering of the blood, that is an essential element of the sacrificial rite. If you don't offer the blood, you've accomplished nothing. But if you can offer the body parts too, that's icing on the cake. Right? That means that you've not only elevated your soul to the service of God, but you've even refined the body to the point that it becomes a vehicle for the service of God. And I think this is a new insight in what the idea of a korban is. You know, there are other interpretations, that it's vicarious execution, if you will, as if to say that for our sins we're deserving of being slaughtered and flayed and burnt. Or it could be merely giving up something of value, as the Maharal says, which demonstrates that our possessions are really God's possessions. There are certainly many interpretations, and all of them have validity, but I think this is one aspect of it. It's really the idea of releasing the soul from the straitjacket of the body, allowing the soul to be elevated to the service of God, and if you're lucky, perhaps even the body being elevated in the process. Yaakov Avinu is a very interesting thing. There's a medrash. Now we can understand the medrash fully. The medrash says, brings a verse in Tehillim, and puts the verse in the mouth of Yaakov Avinu. It says, Sama l'cha nafshi, my soul thirsts for you. Kama l'cha b'sari, my flesh longs for you. So we have a verse that was said by David HaMelech, but the medrash puts it in the mouth of Yaakov Avinu. It says that my soul thirsts for you and my body longs for you. So the medrash says that what the verse means, put in Yaakov's mouth, is that just like my soul yearns for you, the 248 limbs or body parts of my body, Ramach Evarim, also yearn for you. There was Yaakov Avinu was able to achieve a certain harmony, that there was no tension anymore between the soul and the body. That in the same way that his soul yearned for closeness to God, his very body yearned for closeness to God. There were no desires that were contrary to God. It wasn't there was a conflict, there was a tension, but Yaakov's flesh, the limbs of his body, the bones of his body, also yearned for God. That's sama l'cha nafshi, kama l'cha b'sari. And the truth is, it would have to be that way. Because we know that Yaakov, in the mystical tradition, is the exemplar of the midah of emes, of truth. And truth means that there's consistency, through and through. There's no trying to pull the wool over someone else's eyes, there's no pulling the wool over my own eyes. There is total consistency through and through. You know, I hate to bring up current events, but you know, if you've been following the news from Washington, and you hear the politicians, today they're shocked to discover that the executives of AIG are getting these great bonuses, and then you discover that these same politicians really knew about it weeks ago. Now they know about it, they're the ones that put the provision in the legislation to allow the bonuses, and today they're trying to fool everyone into thinking. But the point is that we all know that politics is sheker. I'll tell you a story, just to illustrate the point. It might lose something in translation, but I'll try to do it justice. You know, there's a saying that sheker ein lo raglayim. Sheker has no legs. Because a lie cannot stand. So sheker, falsehood, ein lo raglayim, doesn't have legs. Now the truth is, it's really a Gemara. The Gemara doesn't say it exactly that way. The Gemara makes an amazing observation that the three letters that form the word sheker, shin, kuf, and reish, all stand on a single point, the way they're written in the Sefer Torah. The letter shin comes to a sharp point in the Sefer Torah, so really it doesn't have two legs to stand on. The kuf also, and a reish also is one leg. Whereas ms, you think of the letters of ms, aleph, mem, and saf, they all have very solid, substantial bases. The aleph has two legs, and the mem has a flat bottom, and the taf has two legs. So ms, truth, aleph, mem, saf, has two legs to stand on. It's very firm. It stands forever. But sheker, ein lo raglayim, it has no legs, it falls over. So the story is told that Rabbi Meir Shapiro, the great Lubliner Rav, the founder of the great yeshiva in Lublin, you may know that he also was a member of the Polish parliament. That there were various groups that were represented in the parliament, and he was a representative of Agudas Yisrael. He was a member of the Polish parliament. And once he was there in wherever the capital was, I guess in Warsaw, and he was staying in a hotel with some other Jewish politicians, and as you can imagine, at a Jewish hotel, there would be poor people going around collecting, schnorrers, etc. So there was a peddler who comes in, and he's really collecting charity, but it's a little more respectable to sell something in return. So you give him money, he'd give you something that you didn't need. So on this particular day, the peddler was selling stockings. He's selling stockings. So you give him a few zlotas, he'd give you a pair of stockings. So the guy comes in, Rabbi Shapiro gives him a few coins, and the fellow wants to give him a pair of stockings, and Rabbi Shapiro says, I don't need any stockings. So Rebbe, why not? Stockings, good stockings. So he says, we're politicians. And sheker ein lo raglayim. Lies don't have any legs. So we don't need stockings. You don't need stockings if you have legs. If you don't have legs, you don't need stockings. That's... But Yaakov Avinu is the exemplar of emes. Through and through truth. Consistency. No contradictions. And therefore, if Yaakov Avinu's soul yearns for God, that means that his body must also yearn for God. And therefore, let's go back to our prayers. Shachris corresponds to the Talmud Shel Shachar. But what part of the Talmud Shel Shachar? Not the body parts, that's at night. Undoubtedly, the pouring of the blood in the morning. Mincha corresponds to the pouring of the blood in the afternoon. Ma'ariv corresponds to the burning of the body parts. So we explained that the pouring of the blood is the sacrifice of the soul. It's the elevating of the soul to the service of God. The burning of the body parts is elevating the body to the service of God. Who could ordain such a prayer? Who could get up and say that, yes, I can ordain a prayer which corresponds to the burning of the body parts because in my case, the same way that my soul is devoted to the service of God, my body is also devoted to the service of God. That's Yaakov Avinu. That's why Yaakov Avinu, because he is the exemplar of emes, he is the one who can ordain ma'ariv, which corresponds to the offering of the body parts. But in any case, this is the idea of a carbon. What a carbon is really the expression of our deepest yearning to release the body and to allow the soul to soar. Now there's a very, very great danger. And the great danger is that are we directing that spiritual yearning to a proper object? In other words, the carbon could be brought to the Ribbono Shel Olam. The carbon could be brought to Baal. It can be brought to the most depraved form of Avodah Zarah, and it still has the same symbolism. In other words, if the korban symbolizes the yearning of the soul to devote itself to a spiritual pursuit, but it has to be a worthy spiritual pursuit. It can be corrupted if you misdirect it. And that's why we find that the ritual of Korbonos became a universal. Whereas other spiritual practices are unique to the Jewish people. You know, we put on tefillin and shofar and lulav. We don't find that these are universal practices. But Korbonos, animal sacrifice, was a universal practice. It wasn't only Jews that practiced it. Everyone practiced it.
It predates Jews.
Even predates Jews. Because what it symbolizes is a yearning which is natural to men. It's not a yearning which is specific to Jewish people. It's natural to all human beings, but it can be properly directed or it can be misdirected. And that's why you have to be very, very, very careful with Korbonos. The Rambam adds in the Moreh Nevuchim that really Korbonos are so potentially dangerous that God would have been willing to forego Korbonos. He would have said, better, you shouldn't bring Korbonos. But since it had become such a widespread practice by the time the Jews received the Torah, so telling Jews that they could not practice animal sacrifice would be like telling Jews they couldn't pray. It would be unacceptable. Therefore, God permitted it, but it requires safeguards. And therefore, for example, the Torah says you can't bring sacrifices just wherever you want. It has to be in the Beis HaMikdash. It has to be under the direction of the Kohanim. The Beis HaMikdash, where the sacrifices are brought, is also the seat of the Beis Din, of the Torah, the sages of the Torah, who give us guidance, who give us direction. And it's because we recognize that there is a power in the ritual of Korbonos, which can be easily corrupted, and therefore we have to have safeguards in place to make sure that it isn't. But this is an idea about the korban.